The government, no government wants to see economic pain while they are in power because it looks bad on you. So why would I want to have to deal with the pain and actually fix the problem when I can stimulate and try to push it off, kick the can down the road, essentially. That's what people say.
Seems exactly like what's going to happen.
And that is what has been done, and it is what everyone will want to do. The problem is, right now, if we keep doing that, it's going to cause even more problems because right now, you're right, our dollar is being tested. We haven't, most of us, myself included, haven't lived through a period of sustainably rising interest rates. And we haven't seen what that does to our economy because from like the 1970s until now, it's been a drop in interest rates. We have ups and downs, but from like the 80s, 70s till now, it's just been steadily downwards. And so we haven't seen a period of growing interest rates. Growing interest rates makes borrowing more expensive, it slows down the economy, and we haven't experienced that. And for the last 15 or so years, we've only seen low interest rates, next to zero interest rates. And so for the first time, we're actually experiencing higher interest rates. That is something new for most of us, myself included. So now higher interest rates are going to have an impact. And now if the government just starts stimulating, they try to kind of bring us out of this, that is going to hurt the dollar even more. And then that poses the second concern, like you brought up, is we have major countries around the world, Russia, India, China, that are coming together and saying, we don't like being controlled by the United States. We don't like being controlled and subservient to the dollar. We don't like that the dollar isn't backed by anything. So in 1971, the United States was, I'm going to say this in a kind of like, let's say the politically correct way. In 1971, or before 1971, our government was on the verge of default. We had a lot of debts. Our dollar was then backed by physical gold. So we didn't have the same ability to print money. We needed more gold to print more money. We had a limited amount of wealth. And so now our government had a lot of debts that it owed, especially to other countries around the world. And we were struggling to make these payments. And we were on the verge of default. And that was when President Richard Nixon in 1971 severed the tie with the dollar and gold temporarily. He
Supposedly.
said, I've put this speech many times on my YouTube channel where he said, I am temporarily going to sever the link between the dollar and physical gold. What does that mean? That means that now the government and the Federal Reserve Bank have the ability to print money on command. Now we have all these debts to pay. We have to pay, hundreds of billions of dollars in debts. Fine, just print that money. Here's your money. And now you're a little confused. You wanted gold, but you have the money. So it's like, I got the money. Okay. And everything was just fine. Obviously, inflation really kicked up after that. But now what we're seeing happen is, okay, inflation is becoming a bigger concern. Countries around the world that own dollars are saying, oh, this inflation is a problem. This money is just pieces of paper. What is the real value of this money? It's backed by the economy. It's backed by the military. And we don't like being bullied by the United States. What if we work together to create our own currency and we back it by a metal like gold? Now, this is still in the early stages, but the BRICS nations, like we talked about, have been working to build their own reserve currency, potentially backed by physical gold. And we have seen more central banks, like you said, working to purchase and hoard gold than the last 5 decades. The last time we saw them go after this much gold was when the gold was severed from the dollar temporarily.
And we think that they're doing that because if the BRICS nations pull this off, then to increase their own wealth, they will have to acquire more gold.
Exactly. And then it's kind of like a economic warfare type of situation where it's like, if the United States is getting weaker economically and they're getting weaker internally because people inside the country are, fighting each other, that creates weakness. And people around the world will want to capitalize that weakness. Now, of course, we're in a situation, right, where most of us have grown up never having to worry about inflation. Most of us never had to worry about the long-term concern of our economy or anything like that. But what other countries are saying is, we don't want to continue being bullied. We want to have our own independence. We want something a little bit different. And so that's concerning because, well, if more and more countries don't rely on the dollar, they're going to be less willing to loan money to the United States. And if they're less willing to loan us money, okay, well, that could create more of an inflationary issue. Theory is many of these countries own our dollars. And so if they decided to play the game and dump our dollars, you increase the supply of our dollars, which would increase essentially inflation. It would increase the amount of the supply of dollars in our economic system. And so those are the concerns. Where will that play out? I have no idea. I'm just telling you what's happening right now, right? I mean, there's a lot of conspiracy theorists who are kind of saying this is going to happen. And look, you can kind of play out where this could go, but this is where it becomes so important for us to become economically strong and really understand.
And when you say us, do you mean us as a nation or us as individuals?
Well, our nation is made up of individuals. And so, the government doesn't have its own stream of income.
Well, so that's interesting. I would say there's a pretty big difference between appealing to the individual and appealing to the government, because the individual can be disciplined and the government can still spend like drunken sailors, and now you're still in trouble.
But the individual has the ability to vote and to pick who's in government, right? And so if the individual is educated financially, then you can make a more educated decision of who's running the country as well, because the country is run up by...
Do you have faith in what you just said?
Look, man, you have to. I feel. Especially, look, my family is from a state in India called Punjab. And we have obviously issues here. But economically, there's nowhere else in the world you'd want to be.
I agree with that. But I also am very sensitive to the reality of you're the leading empire until you cease to be the leading empire because you deteriorate from the inside, which feels like what's happening right now. So there's that famous John Lennon quote about in the 80s, if I were living in Roman times, I would live in Rome, where else? And now I live in New York because America is the new Roman Empire and New York is Rome itself. I feel like there's a similar quote to be had, which is that there's just a psychology that ends up happening when empires end up declining, and some of those same things are happening right now. So the fact that we're so over leveraging from, again, I am the layperson. I'm educated enough to know that I'm on the right track, that directionally what I'm about to say I think is very accurate. That we are over leveraging our position as the world's reserve currency, that the fact that we have created so many new dollars, I forget what the percentage, but it's absolutely ridiculous. In the last 5 or 6 years, we've created something like 40% of all the dollars that have ever existed in the history of this country. So it's like, that's so crazy. And so when I think about appealing to the average person, hey, please be thoughtful about who you vote for. We want to be careful as a society. The problem is when everybody is grown up, being the reserve currency for as long as we have, and Ray Dalio has a map of the changing world order. It goes in 6 stages. Every empire ends up collapsing. There's only 6 stages. Stage 6 is absolute total collapse. He puts us somewhere around stage 5.5. So it's like we're just headed down this path. And when he looks at what are the indicators of that, it's the fighting inside of a country. He talks endlessly about how we treat each other. Mm-hmm. I saw him backstage literally weeks ago. And, I was like, hey, because we were in Dubai. And I'm just like, whoa, Dubai is popping off. I'm like, you're a guy, you travel around a lot. How do you think about where to go? Where is going to be the economic opportunity? And he said, Tom, it's all about how people in the country treat each other. Yeah. And I was like, that's so interesting. Now, you mentioned earlier that we're colliding internally, and that's part of the weakness. I think it's a multi-pronged thing. Part of the weakness, you and Ray are saying the right thing. We're not treating each other well, and we have to be very thoughtful. But the other part is what you're bringing up now that you have faith in that maybe I have a little bit less faith in, which is I don't think I'll get there. Let me bring this all together.